Hey there, buddy, Pally here. Welcome back. Today, I'm going to be playing a little bit of the closed beta of The Crew. This is the open world racing game from Ubisoft with a heavy multiplayer online component. You may or may not have seen this one. They haven't done a very good job advertising it, although Sony, the PS4, it's been in both of their press conferences for the last two E3s, I believe. It was definitely in the last one. It's coming out, I believe, just on PS4 console side and then PC also. So obviously I'm going to be playing it on PC as that's where it's going to be the best. So that's where I'm at, and that's the closed beta I got into. I just got into the beta yesterday, and when I first got into it, I signed an NDA, and I was like, well, I guess I'm not showing any video of this for a little while. And then oddly enough, I saw people streaming it. I saw YouTube videos going up, so I did a little Google search, and apparently they sent out a tweet saying that forget the NDA, just go nuts. So I'm going to go ahead and throw up a little bit of content here. Now, if you're not sure what this game is, what they've gone ahead and done is Ubisoft, or the developers, they have, for the most part, rendered all of the United States in a scaled down version. So as the game opens up, you start off in Detroit, up here in the upper part of the map, obviously, and you'll spend your first hour there. There is actually, surprisingly, there is a story element to the game that we'll come back to in a little bit. But you're going to start off up there, and then just for a matter of size, if you look down here, there's St. Louis. Obviously, driving from Detroit to St. Louis in real time, I don't know, I'd imagine it's probably 5 to 6 hours, something like that. I've never driven that out there. I don't know the exact distance, but it's a pretty long haul. It took me about 8 minutes or so to drive from Detroit to St. Louis. It's a fairly shrunk down, but as we look around here, they have almost the entire United States. They got roads everywhere. They have Miami, they have DC, they have LA, they have San Francisco, they have Dallas. They have parts of all of these cities located throughout the game. Gauging from what I've seen going across down to there, I would say like the long drive, if you're going from like Miami up towards Seattle, Washington, you're probably looking at like a 20 to 25 minute trip to cross the entire map. This would, for matter of what I've seen, I would guess it makes it roughly double the size of Forza Horizon. Roughly double, something like that. The first Forza Horizon, they are making a second one of those too, and we'll see how big that one is. And in fact, I'm going to be comparing this game to Forza Horizon quite a bit, as it plays a lot like Forza Horizon. I'm actually a pretty big Forza fan. I've always been disappointed that Microsoft has never brought them to PC. I don't know why. I mean, Forza is not exactly a system seller, so keeping it just on console is not pushing more 360s or more Xbox Ones. And yeah, they would just move more copies. Anyway, I digress. Stupid Microsoft. It resembles quite a few things of Forza Horizon, the open world, the events that you're going to come across just as you drive around. There's a lot of just random events as you're going around. You'll come across these icons just floating in the middle of the road, and they'll trigger different things that you get to do. You'll hit ones that are like a slalom event where you'll get the flags pop up on the road, and you got to go right of the flag, left of the flag, right of the flag, and as you clear through those elements, you'll get either, well, failure, bronze, silver, or gold. And depending on what you get, you're going to get a certain amount of XP, and you're going to get a certain reward. So you have slalom events, you have clean driving events where you're going to stay on the road without hitting anything. If you run off the road, your clock ticks down faster. There's ones that are collision events where you have to drive through these walls and everything. There's several different elements that you're going to come across driving around, similar to Forza. Then you're going to come across flags throughout the world, which are actual race events. And there's quite a few of these race events that I've seen so far. There's the standard race. There is the straight check one-way race. I don't know what it would be called, but basically it's not a loop, but instead first person to the finish wins. There's things like that. They have these events that they call raids, where it's kind of a bumpers car type thing. You have a car with a lot more durability. and your target car has a certain amount of health, like 25 health, and every time you hit it, you're going to knock off a certain amount of health. Depending on how you hit it and with what velocity you hit it, you're going to take more health off or less health off. If you get a good head-on collision with it at high speed, boom, they're done right away. If you just rear-end them, you're going to only take off 10% of their health or whatever. It's an interesting little element. Then they have off-road racing, and apparently later on in the game there's full-blown circuit racing or track racing. I have not seen any of that yet. So there's a good mixture of different racing elements combined in there in this open world that has a bit of a Need for Speed field mixed in with it too. In fact, the game is kind of a cross between Forza Horizon, Need for Speed, with a little bit of Burnout added in there, just for fun. And I gotta say, I'm pretty darn impressed. Now, admittedly, I'm a car guy. Admittedly, I'm a bit of a racing fan. I own quite a few racing games. And admittedly, I've been looking for a game like this on PC. We get a decent number of racing games on PC, but they tend to all be track racers. We get the auto sports. We've got Grid on there. We've got the Need for Speeds, but we haven't really had a whole bunch of these. We haven't had a game like Forza Horizon, and this has me thinking. I'm impressed so far. You might see where I'm leaning on this game already after 4 hours of a beta, which it says something. There are also some other elements mixed in there. Being a Ubisoft game, they had to include towers to unlock the maps. So throughout the map, you'll find these radar dishes, or satellite dishes, I guess is more what they are. They're not radar, they're satellite uplinks. And if you get close to these satellite uplinks, you'll download the data and basically update your GPS and update the map with everything that's going on in that area of the map and everything. It's the tower from Assassin's Creed or Tomb Raider or Far Cry. It's the same thing, but obviously you can't climb it because you're in a car and cars can't really climb towers, so you drive up next to the satellite dish. And it doesn't really, you don't actually know where they are. If you look on your map, you'll see a general circle, maybe 3 miles in diameter, something like that. Nah, not quite that big, but you get the idea. A circle, and somewhere within that is going to be located. And as you get close to it, your radar will start to pick up and narrow you in until you find it. They also have hidden crashed cars, basically kit cars that out there, and you'll find these out in the middle of woods. You'll find them in farmers fields and everything, and they're old junkers that if you collect enough of them, then you can rebuild and assemble this kit car that you'll be able to use. There's quite a bit here. If you're not a racing fan, I don't know if there's going to be enough to carry it. If you're somebody that likes Burnout, you like the collision system, the point system, I don't see that. There's a bit of the collision system here. There's a bit of that Burnout City feel, but there's none of that dramatic points calculation, running down, crashing through 50 cars. None of that is going on. They actually have a somewhat unique collision system. Your cars, from what I can tell, all the collision is purely aesthetic. It'll not actually change the performance of the car. But if you get into a big collision, if you rear end somebody, you're going to bust in your front bumper and everything. Then as you drive along, if you're able to avoid hitting anything for a while, your car actually slowly repairs over time. And it's actually pretty well done. It's pretty neat to look at. And what this means is basically if you screw up and get in one big accident, it's not the end. Your car is going to be damaged, but it's going to regroup. The only way you're going to actually damage your car to the point where you can't drive, to where you're out of the race, is if you do collision after collision after collision and you don't give your car a chance to repair. And it takes some time. A good head-on collision is going to take about 30 to 45 seconds of clean driving to fully repair. And you can actually watch it as it comes back out. You don't even need to drive. You can just sit still and just wait for it, and it'll reform and everything. It's an interesting take on it. I think it was a proper move in order to adapt for the open world games. We've seen plenty of other games where they just do the aesthetic collision system, and then as soon as the race is over, the car's fixed up and brand new. You couldn't really do that with an open world game. It just wouldn't work. So this is it's an interesting take, and I do like it. It does have one downside from what I can tell right now. Each car, like head on, just has one type of damage it can do. So if you clip a trash bag with your right bumper, it's going to cause the same damage as if you rear end a tractor trailer. Not the same amount, but the same style. Basically, it's going to bust in the front bumper just to a lesser extent because it hit the right and it's going to reform. Basically, they've only done one type of collision for the front, one type of collision for the back, one type of collision for each side, and then they reform back out the same way. It's a small complaint, really, and, whatever. It's not a big deal. Now, I was talking a little bit about a story. This is what kind of surprised me very much when I first logged in. Right away, I had this cutscene kicked in, and they started going with the story. And first of all, with an open world type game like this, I wasn't really expecting a story. I was expecting them, at least not much of a story. I was expecting kind of this, here's your car, here's your crew, you're going to go out and you're going to make a name for yourself, and you're going to get your own territory. That's what I was expecting. And then the crew would end up being your friends or everything. But there's actually let's see, how do we put this without going too far into it? There's almost a Need for Speed like cops and robbers story within this game. And it opens up with a cutscene. You play for about an hour and a half as the initial story opens up, and then after about an hour and a half, then you're finally released out into the world to race around and continue on the story. Once you actually get out into the world, the story is very generic, and it comes down to what a lot of games have tried to done is you got to earn your rank within these gangs and everything, and in order to do that, you're going to drive, and if you can drive really fast, they're going to accept you and not think about checking your background or anything like that. And it's generic, but I wasn't expecting it, and it was kind of a pleasant surprise. So there is a little bit of a story there if that's something that you'd be interested in following. For the most part, I forgot about it as soon as it was over, and I just wanted to get out there and race. And the driving, the running around, is actually surprisingly pleasant. The game handles kind of a bit like Forza, maybe not quite as simulation as Forza, maybe a little more of the arcadey as Need for Speed. It's somewhere kind of in the middle. It's definitely not Gran Turismo. It's not the full-blown simulation of that, and it's not the Forza Motorsport, not the Forza Horizon, but the Motorsport. It's not the full-blown simulation version of that. It's the easier, the dumbed-down version of both of those, which we have plenty of the full-blown simulations on PC. We don't have the more arcadey ones. So I kind of like it, and I've been enjoying it quite a bit. I've said that quite a few times now. But I think the driving, it's adequate. Now, there are the options within the menus for a full-blown racing wheel. I haven't pulled my wheel out and plugged it in yet. I just haven't put enough time into it. The wheel's a little too much of a pain in the ass in order to plug it in and get it all set up and everything, get it clamped down onto the table. The controller's working just fine, but there is racing wheel support in here, which is impressive. I wouldn't have expected that either. And yeah, it races like you would expect. It's borderline simulation, but with just enough arcadey that I think anybody could pick it up and play it. The other big element that I haven't really talked about is the online. So the game must be online to be played, and so far the servers have been pretty darn stable. There's not a whole lot of pop-in. I don't know how much of it is being server-side stored and how much of it is client-side, but the draw distance and your racing is pretty clean. I've not had any major lags. Well, let me correct that. I had one weird issue. I was rounding a turn, and the game kind of locked up for literally about 15 seconds. I had the audio locked up. Nothing was happening for about 15 seconds. I was about to do a control, delete, and kill the program, and all of a sudden it came back and continued on, no problem. That might have been server side, that might have been the game. I don't know. It is a beta. Outside of that one instance, I've had no performance issues at all. It does not play like an online game. It plays like most of the world, the traffic and all that, is being rendered client side. There's no delay in that. Within the world, you'll see these other tags of other people around here are other drivers. Now, they've done kind of an instanced server from what I can tell, where like every 100 drivers or so, or maybe every 50 drivers in each city get their own little instance, so it's not overpopulated with drivers, but there are definitely plenty of them around. You're going to come across them. Now, I've had a tough time grouping up with them. I've only managed to do it once, as you go to a certain race, and one of the options is search for co-op. And the co-op means you'll be competing against other drivers rather than other players. And I've had one person respond to it, and once that person responded, we got in. It was me, that other person, versus two AI guys. and it was pretty good. There was no latency, no lag. I don't know if I was hosting or if he or she was hosting, but it ran well and was quite enjoyable. With a few friends to play this, I think there could be a good game here. It really could be. It's a little too early to tell as it's closed beta, but the base structure is in place. There's enough of a world there. If you're a racing fan, I think there's enough here to be a little bit excited about. The final execution is going to need to be watched. Now, there are a few small problems. First of all, the game has open mics everywhere. I had to go to their forums to find this out. If you log in, basically they have VoIP enabled, and anybody with a microphone plugged in, you'll get close to them and you'll just hear them breathing. Like from about a mile and a half away, all of a sudden you'll just hear this person breathing in their microphone or their TV on in the background. And I don't know if it's their microphones or the VoIP service is really bad. It's awful. And it took me a while. I finally figured out you can mute people. If you hit F, you can bring up your tag, right click, and mute all voice. Doing that solved that problem. But they need to update that. There needs to be a push to talk key. It needs to default to off. There needs to be an easy way to mute people with open mics. That needs to happen. The number of cars is undetermined at this point. I haven't seen a whole lot. I've seen 6 different cars, I think. I've seen a Camaro, a Mustang, my 370Z that you see me driving here, a 300, Chrysler 300, a Volkswagen Golf, and a Challenger. I think those are the 6 I've seen. They show pictures of a lot more cars, but it's hard to say. Being an online game, they can always add more in, but we got to keep an eye on how many cars there are. My other disappointment is the upgrade system. So, it's not bad. They've kind of gone for the generic anybody can handle it route, which is understandable, just disappointing to me. So when you buy your car is going to come as the default factory model. And then throughout the city, each city you can go to different tuners and they're going to offer you different options. In Detroit, the first tuner you're going to come across, they're going to have street upgrade. The street upgrade's the first basic upgrade. It's just, general nitrous, maybe a turbo, some brakes and everything. It increases your car's performance by about 30%. Then there's different upgrades in every city that you go to that you can visit. There is a dirt upgrade for obviously off-road. There's a raid upgrade, which makes your car tougher for the raid environments. There's a performance upgrade, which is, from what I can tell, a direct upgrade of the street. And then there is a circuit upgrade, which is going to be the high-end, the full-on racing on track type upgrade, from what I can tell. That one, from what I've seen, is they've torn out all the interior. You're down to just the single bucket seat, the roll cage. They've taken any and extra all metal off of it. It's the high-end upgrade. So you have these predetermined classes that you choose from. Then within each class, as you run around and complete races, depending on if you get bronze, silver, or gold, they're going to give you a bronze, silver, or gold reward. And it's going to be like a pair of disc brakes, or a quick shift gearbox, or a higher gear ratio, or a turbo. And it's going to, whatever you win, will then have a random element to it. So if you get a pair of a suspension, it'll then kind of randomize and say, all right, this suspension, and you'll see this little wheel tick around, and it'll say this suspension is for better traction. This suspension is for off-roading. This suspension is for that and that within each individual class. And I don't know. I don't see the high-end getting really in there and tinkering and adjusting your suspension, canting your nose down a little bit in order to shift your weight to the rear tires when you step on the gas, and you go the other way around, towing your tires in and out a little bit, adjusting your gear ratio. I don't see that. It's not really surprising, as for a lot of people that'd be too much. I'm going back to Gran Turismo 3 here, where we had that and I loved it. That tinkering with all that little stuff was a good bit. Did I say Gran Turismo? Yeah, I did say I was hoping I didn't say Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto 3. Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of car tinkering there. You get the idea. But the upgrade system, it's effective, efficient, easy enough that everyone can come across it, and it's pretty straightforward. I just wish there was a little bit more. There is also a point system. So there's two different upgrades, and we'll finish up with this. Your character himself, your driver, will upgrade as you win races. As they gain XP, they upgrade on levels, and as they upgrade, they can unlock more options, more races, higher end equipment for their car. Each car then, when you first buy it, has a point number assigned to it. So say the 370Z was maybe a 5-point car when I first bought it. Converting it over to a street car, or doing the street performance on it, converted it up to like a 25-point car. Adding on one of these gold gearboxes I got might have made it increase that by 3, made it a 27. Getting better tires might have made it 28. So each individual item that you get, the higher performance it is, the more it improves your car, is going to add 1, 2, maybe 3 points to your car. And then the point value of your car is how they determine who you can race against, what you can go up against, the difficulty of who you're going against, the AI racers and all that stuff. So you're going to be matched according to those, from what I can tell, in a fairly efficient manner. Now, that does not mean that somebody, if you get all of the parts unlocked, and a certain race is pretty much all straight away on the highway, you could forego any of the small, like, off-roading upgrades and just focus on higher gear ratio, more torque, and more horsepower, and clearly have a more powerful car with the same point value, just set up for that race. We'll need to see how that plays out, but it's a good base level. Overall, I'm pretty darn impressed with the crew so far. It's been enjoyable. I've been liking it, and yeah, I plan on playing a little bit more of it. It's definitely on my watch list now of games to keep an eye on for this holiday season. So you might see a little bit more footage of this later on. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, this has been Paler. Thanks for watching.